And all these are geared towards ensuring that journalists are well prepared for the coverage of the 2023 general elections, understanding clearly the very strategic stakeholding role of the media, especially in the delivery of credible, verifiable, inclusive election. That's why we are doing all these. We talk about the key stakeholders in the delivery of the elections as clearly captured in those descriptive words I've used. We would see that the media, the election management body, INEC, and the security agencies are so strategic. And that's why, if we are going to get it right, these three stakeholders must work together collaboratively to ensure that we get it right. So I want to again appreciate Dr. Pele and his Abino Foundation for doing a very great work. The other day, some 2 days ago, I watched the live coverage of the appearance or presentation of the INEC chairman during his speaking engagement at the Chatham House. And he took time to talk about the dashboards, disability dashboards, created, designed by the Albino Foundation. And that's a very good initiative that has been put together. That clearly will go a long way in ensuring an appreciable level of inclusivity as far as the 2023 general elections are concerned. So in the same way, what this meeting intends to achieve is for us to come to the very clear reality that we must take note of the tiniest of details as far as this election is concerned. The tiny details, most times, we don't reckon with them. Most times when we go to cover elections, we are more concerned with when the presidential candidate has voted, the governor of the state has voted, the candidates taking part in the elections that they have voted. No, we must go beyond them. They are just very few. The electorate themselves, including persons with disabilities, they equally deserve to be captured. Clearly, if they go to vote and the crowd has not allowed them to vote, it's an issue we must address. So that at the end of the day, we must ensure that every segment of our society must have clearly exercised their franchise. And it is only at that point that we say that we have done the right thing and the election is credible. Because we cannot talk about credibility when a group of people have been so left out in the entire process. So it's very, very important. Like I said earlier, the issue of conflict-sensitive reporting, even when we go for conflict, let us also take note of all these issues. Now we are battling with what I see as global information disorder, where fake news has assumed a frightening level, where issues around disinformation, malinformation, propaganda, in most cases, yellow journalism have taken the front row. As journalists, we must also ensure that our reports, the stories we turn out, they represent the truth. They are factual and not fictional. They are verifiable. They are authentic. That before you talk about that story you want to write, ensure that you know the origin of it. Don't rely on hearsay. Somebody, put something together, throws to you, and you turn out. At the end of the day, you end up misinforming, disinforming, malinforming the people that you are intending to give the proper information. And as we also go for coverage of this election, let us ensure that we turn out the good stories, like I said, authentic stories. Because if we turn out the bad ones, of course, it is what you sow. let us ensure that by the time we are done with this election, we beat our chest and say, indeed, we have done the right thing. Like I always say, if that story you are writing will not help to pull people out of poverty, if that story you are putting together will not help to bring people out of poverty, if that story you are writing will not help to bring people out of ignorance, you are not doing journalism. We must practice journalism that centers on development, not journalism that destroys the entire system. We must practice journalism that will ensure that the electoral system is right, not the journalism that panders to the whims of selfish political actors. Let us not do journalism that will center on pecuniary considerations. Let us not do journalism that is about mercantile interests. Let our journalism be development oriented. Let our journalism help Nigerians get out of ignorance, like I said earlier. That is the only way we say, indeed, we are practicing through journalism. So without boring you with words, let me not repeat or regurgitate what has been said. And in the process, take more time, like Dr. Jake did too. I want to indeed appreciate the organizers of this roundtable and also commend you for making our time to be part of it. I believe by the time we are done, we will be better enriched, we will be better equipped, we will be more prepared, better prepared to face, like I said when I started, the task ahead. Thank you very much.
I think this is kind of starting
Thank you very much, sir, for that awesome message. It's okay. Thank you very much for that awesome message. You really spoke to our hearts, just so that we get more inclusive in our reporting and practice journalism that does not favor a particular segment in the community or the society. So our next.
Please, because the president said he wants to go, and I think it will be very honorable for all of us to have a group photograph with him before he goes.
Okay.
And then
he wants to leave now. But I would have begged on behalf of Larry that at least watch his introductory speech before you do. Okay, so no, why don't
take the picture?
Let's take the picture.
Okay.
We can take the
The journalist has spoken.
We can take the photo here using this banner as a background.
Yes. My colleagues, just come this way. Is there any lady who wants to sit down? I think from this way. No, wait, come this way now.
You don't get too much of the table.
Photographer, will you be able to give me a copy immediately after this for?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Julian, we'll give you a copy. Julian, we'll give you a copy.
Let's go.
Don't. You guys don't like photographs. You're photogenic. Why are you?
Sorry, what
Okay.
No, I don't do
Tie dye. Please kindly settle down. We'll take our first presentation for the day from the Executive Director of International Press Center. He's going to take us on understanding PWD inclusive reporting as a platform for promoting the image and enhancing the voices of PWDs. Oh, thanks.
Well, I will be. Let's even see whether it's.
any problem?
No,
Who has this tripod?
I
You should move it.
okay.
Okay, that's an apple, right?
Yeah.
But you have to listen. You have the converter.
This one.
Yeah. One.
What, is it coming up?
Sure.
Yeah, but how do you connect?
It's connected.
It's
connected.
Okay. Oh, okay.
It's connected.
Thank you, sir.
I don't know whether we need to.
Make it bigger.
Well, just. Okay. Can we see very well?
For those of you who can
Okay, thank you very well. I mean, we can all see very well, eh? Okay, thank you very much. And let me join Jake and the president of NUJ to welcome us to this dialogue. I think it's a dialogue we're going to have, really, because these issues are not new. And as a matter of fact, all they've said more or less introduces what I'll be talking about. We know the issues, we know the problems, and perhaps it's about. Can I have the mic? Mhm. So maybe what we're just trying to look at is how much better can we do this year. We are all colleagues and journalists like yourself, even though we might have practiced at different times. I've worked in newspapers, I've worked in radio, Voice of America, and I'm currently the executive director of International Press Center. I've also published the media resource book, and I have a few copies here. I know the criteria we use to share these few copies. So we're looking at understanding and I was a one-time teacher. Maybe I will return to the tape if you promised me your votes. In 2003, I ran for Senate in Lagos West. I did not win and I did not lose. Because the man who won, Ubafiki Omi, had 300,000 votes. I ran in the Lagos West, that is the largest senatorial district in Lagos. That's 10 big local governments, Keja, Agege, Badagry, and others. So the PDP woman came second with 200,000 plus votes. And I came third with 77,000 votes. Oh, no. That's the bronze medal. So maybe after all this articulated generation, the galvanized generation have cancelled themselves out, we can then return to the field. Anyway, but for now, we're trying to look at, people's with disability inclusive reporting, a platform for promoting the image. I like that aspect of image, and I was the one who put parentheses and issues, because that image also speaks to the point that the president was raising when he was talking about the election reporting, that we should report, good things when it happens. And so when we're talking of people with disability, we should always not look at it from, the point of view of suffering people, negative people, and so on. There are all other things that we need to look at. So that's the first point I will make. So this does a brief outline, the purpose of this exercise, then a brief introduction, and I ask the question, what is an inclusive society? So that is all we are trying to achieve, whether in terms of inclusive reporting of elections, inclusive reporting of development. Ultimately, we want Nigeria to be an inclusive society. And I feel that all journalists should commit to that, particularly to us here. Then the implications of non-inclusion, what happens when society is not inclusive. Then what can or should be done, and how can or should it be done, which I think is actually the crux of the matter. I hope we're still together. Because I know some of you are monitoring your candidates who are campaigning. The problem with you journalists is that you are more political than even the politicians themselves. When we're in places like this, we talk about, balance, objectivity. But when you step out, especially at the NUJ press center, you start fighting yourself. Why should you be there? Why you should be why should you be and some of you fight those fights because some other things have happened. Because we are consultants, some of these politicians. You think we don't know. Well, sometimes when we see your reports, we know that something has happened. By their reports, ye shall know them. So the Abino Foundation wants us to have this training so that we can expand on the relevance of PWB inclusive reporting in entrenching an inclusive society. And we want us to learn the implications of non-inclusion and how to drive societal interest in PWB issues through inclusive reporting. So those are just the two purposes that we have for this, and which means that in terms of outcome, whatever we have been doing, I know some of us have been working on inclusive, we have done stories and so on. We have to see how we improve on it, and maybe from this dialogue, we can pick one or two new ideas or approaches or ways of doing this. Well, this is just about how the World Health Organization tried to reclassify the whole question of people with disability, and the approach which they adopted, which is what we are following now, is a social model of disability as against the medical model which was previously used. And they try to define disability as outcome of interaction between a person's impairment and the environment and attitudinal barriers he or she may face. So when double president Tate or new president Tate about all those to do to ensure that people with disability are able to vote with ease or even register with ease, is based on this approach. And it's very important because it shapes even our perception as journalists, the way we see these people. They are just human beings like us. And it is just that one way or the other, they have some disadvantages that makes them a category. So we have to have that at the back of our mind, and we'll see how this can influence how we report. So by the time you get the slide, you also see, and which some of us know already, UN Convention on Rights of People with Disability and so on. And in fact, they even said that it's an evolving concept because, again, they emphasize that interaction. So it's something that is evolving, and our knowledge will continue to improve. And I must say that Adino Foundation has really done wonderfully well in this aspect of building knowledge, things that we take for granted but are very, very important. So that's my introduction, if we're still together. So they said for this exercise, we should work towards an inclusive society. And I asked, what is an inclusive society? Again, we have the answers already provided. It says it's a society that overrides differences of race, gender, class, generation, and geography, and ensures inclusion, equality of opportunity, as well as capability of all members of society to determine an agreed set of social institutions that govern social interaction. This is an expert group in the definition of promoting social integration. And we can see that every word there is quite instructive, and weighty. And it tells us that, and I'm going to come to that, I don't want to correct you myself. The other definition I provided for us here is the one by the World Summit for Social Development. This was 1995. Some of us were even not used to them. And it defines an inclusive society as a society for all, in which every individual, each with rights and responsibilities, has an active role to play. So when we talk about electing people with disability to political offices in 2023 elections, I think what we're looking at is trying to fulfill an aspect of this definition to enable them to have an active role to play in our democracy. And it's all about respect for human rights and all the rest of them, which we don't have to do. So on the basis of those definitions, and because this is a media audience, I try to argue that there's a social responsibility dimension to building an inclusive society when we're looking at media. Because we are journalists, we are in the media. And why is this so? It's simply because as far back as 2006, these two experts or authors, they describe social responsibility theory this way. And the argument is that, and those of us who have studied mass communication, schools of journalism, we have come across this very well. But let's remind ourselves what it says. It says the thrust of the social responsibility theory is that the media should serve as a public trust to give voice to diverse segments of the population, disseminate information responsibly, and be responsible for fostering productive and creative greater communities. Again, an inclusive society is one that is productive, that is creative. But you can't have that if all those that make that community are not part of the processes. And they can only have that if we give voice. And it talks about diverse segments. That diverse incorporates people with disability. Now, beyond this general definition, we have a situation where this guy, Dennis McQuaid, now looking at the old, said there are 7 principles, and we'll go through and we'll see how this fits into the discourse we are having. The first one he says is the media should accept and fulfill certain obligations to society. So what we are saying here today is that we should accept and fulfill obligations to people with disability. Are we together? So that is clear. Because the point I'm trying to make is that it's a matter of social responsibility for us to do all these things that have brought us together, all the things that Jake is talking about, and so on and so forth. The second principle, which Dennis McQuaid emphasized, is that in fulfilling those obligations, we must set high or professional standards of informativeness, truth, accuracy, objectivity, and balance. In other words, we don't say because we are promoting issues of people with disability and we go and report falsehood. President was talking about misinformation and disinformation. We don't raise unnecessary alarm, wrong sensational headline. So if on election day, for example, let's say in Kubwa or one other place, it's not impossible that one or two people with disability could have problem voting or maybe getting registered to vote, being accredited to vote. If something happens, don't go and then do a story and run a headline and says, people with disabilities disenfranchised, on election day, because we are talking of just maybe one or two polling units. Except if it's something that has happened across the country, and then we're looking at an aggregate, of opinion. So for everything we do, professionalism, really matters. That is the second, principle. Then the third one says, when we are also fulfilling these obligations, we must self-regulate within the framework of law and established institutions. And I'm going to talk about that, when I'm concluding. Let's look at number 4. Can somebody read it so that I know that we're having this conversation together? And it's also a way for you to know whether your eyeglasses are still working.
You should avoid whatever should avoid whatever right? Violence or civil disorder or
offense to minority groups. Offense to minority groups. This is about how we report it, the language of our reporting. To know that we will not end up, denigrating or degrading these people. I was having a conversation with a friend, and what he said is albinism a disability. I'm trying to say, but if you are born with it, why is it disability? But people also are born with eye impairments. So what I'm saying. So it shows just sometimes how you have some level of ignorance when we are talking about this. The fifth one is that we as a media should be pluralistic and reflect the diversity. You can see that it's a constant reflecting diversity, giving access to various points of view and the right to reply. So we must not be narrow. And we're going to see what we have been doing so far. By the time I show you the outcome of our monitoring. Number 6 is very important. It says the society and the public have the right to expect high standards of performance, and intervention can be justified to secure this or a public good. What this is saying is that people with disabilities have a right to demand that we report their issues professionally. And finally, that journalists and media professionals should be accountable to society and the others. This is also about we are accountable to people with disability. They have a right to demand because media is a public trust. We exist for the society, and if that public includes people with disability, we have to be part of that. So I think that this is very, very important, the social responsibility dimension. I looked at implications of non-inclusion. We have looked at what an inclusive society is. And so what is the implication? The implication of non-inclusion on the explanation we've had on what constitutes an inclusive society, expectations of social responsibility, and so on and forth, could include continuous violation of the rights of about 30 million Nigerians with disability. That is the population. About 5 to 10 years ago, we used to talk about 22 million, but it has increased. This is a large percentage of our population. I'm not very good in mathematics. I passed maths after maybe the second sitting for a while for the rest of them. For those of you who calculate what this is of 200 million, we take that as a population, we know the implication. Then it will also mean non-inclusive electoral processes and elections. And if electoral processes and elections are non-inclusive, that means that our democracy is non-inclusive. But if at the end of the day, we continue to under-elect women, youths, people with disability, then we are not there. So therefore, something has to be done. And this is why we are having this conversation. Please feel free to contribute at any point in time. Although we are all going to have something to say shortly. We know what a non-inclusive society is. So what will an inclusive Nigerian nation society look like? It will be a country where the rights of about 30 million Nigerians are guaranteed, protected, and respected. in the Nigerian society where all these human rights frameworks, UN Charter, Universal Declaration of Rights, all of them, are fully integrated and are implemented as part of our legislation. And of course, the rights, of course, as enshrined in the Constitution, are actually carried out. That's what an inclusive Nigerian society will look like. Now, this is where our conversation really lies. What then can or should the media do? And what approaches can we journalists adopt trying to further promote these inclusive issues? I said maybe we should just rush it. I think some of us are familiar with this. Are we? Just go ahead. Okay, no, it's good so that I don't want to assume because it's also possible stuff. So we're talking of approach. I said maybe we should just rush it. Really?
No.
No. You don't rush it.
That's why we are here.
That's why we're here. Okay. I'm glad I'm able to kind of. I hope you have finished rushing that call. So if you step out now, you can't take a call or anything. You don't have to rush it really. I think so. I think it's an acronym actually. So actually, it's an acronym that I'm putting here. When I say maybe we should just rush it, I'm just bringing up, fairly new, but not that new anymore. That comes up in conversations on when we are talking of media reporting of different issues.
I know the acronym.
You know the acronym, okay? Which is tell us.
Report us until something happens.
Okay. So please give me a round of applause. Report until something happens. That's what we are emphasizing now. Rush. Report until something happens. So by the time we finish this conversation, what I want is a situation whereby each and every one of us will make up his or her mind and say, okay, this is one issue I'm going to continue to report until something happens. It could be that you just go to, and this is why question is important. You may just take a walk to the local government office in your area. Just take the local government and look at that local government office and see whether the way the construction, whether they provided for a station where somebody on a wheelchair can easily enter that office. Or you look, at the toilet and conveniences and so on. And as a journalist, because you have the power, you can then have a conversation, maybe with the head of information in that local government or the local government chairman and say, I've observed that, look, or you can even, and this is what we need to do about journalism. Nothing says you cannot go and borrow, a wheelchair and go there and, even if you don't have that disability, say you want to see the chairman and ask them, to help you. And then you now tell the chairman that, look, see what that meant and whatever. I'm actually, reporter. Why don't you have this thing? It will just cost you little money to be able to create a different pathway. And then you begin to report that story. First, that you don't have it. Two, that the chairman of the local government has pledged to construct it. And you can obtain commitment. You say, chairman, are you going to do this in 3 months, in 6 months, or 9 months? And then he says, well, it's not in the budget, but I will see what I can do, maybe in 3 months. And then you go back there, and then he includes it in the budget. Or maybe he even looks for money. You say, I know this, what's that name? I know Julian, that Julian, please, anytime you see her, she's coming to talk about this construction thing or whatever. In fact, our pressure is too much, then they do it. And then they make that provision. You have reported this until something has happened. So that's just the kind of perception I want you to have, that there's no aspect of life where you cannot report this thing until something happens. So let's agree to rush it. However, what have I said there? You can't just rush without what? Without knowledge. Otherwise, you may not get the desired results. So that's why you need to do research, know what is happening, and so on and so forth. In fact, even if you are reporting that local government, it might be good for you to check Find out from them whether they are able to make provision for that. Otherwise, you will look stupid and they will say, oh, but we already have it in the budget. Why did you take it? So that's why we need a deeper knowledge of the issues of people with disability, requiring detailed analysis. I will correct that it's a mistake. Requiring detailed analysis required. So I will correct that. Maybe I was rushing it when I was typing that. So I want us to just brainstorm. So I want to ask us really, who are people with disabilities? And all of us will be part of it. Who are people with disability? People are challenged. People are challenged. Physically, blind.
They are not challenged.
Well, okay, please. She has given an answer. Please clap for her. Who are people with disability? Did you hear her? Did you hear her?
No.
I said just like she said, who actually, and for example, someone who can't walk.
Okay.
They're almost the same thing.
It's almost the same thing. You find it to read law. Because you are talking like a judge. You are making the assumption like the lead judgment, so you are concurring.
People with disabilities are those who are actually having challenges with their abilities.
Challenges with their abilities. Julian.
People that
You are not agreeing with that. I thought you were France.
these are people that experience one barrier of their life.
Differently abled. Okay, can we applaud that? Differently abled. I'm learning, I've not heard that one before. I will use that in another training. They will think I'm a. Do you want to say something? Not at all. Why?
Because they are all correct.
They are all correct. Say something, because I'm going to take your picture. I look alike of one of my cousins. When I got there, I was like, what is going on? Okay.
She will get it right.
She will get it. You see, all of us.
I think those who have sensory, physical, intellectual disabilities, there must be that is interaction with the barriers in society, that hinders them from participating.
Can I ask?
Yes, please just add.
Okay. Not like, sorry, I'm not giving you a chance. That's what correct.
No, please feel free. Feel free. We're here to learn.
Since that was our report on persons with disability, I had work like the person that cannot walk. Every person walks, and what is walking? How you walk from one location to another. So that's walking. So every person walks. If someone using wheelchair walks, then we don't use challenge. One is an insult to the person with disability. And then secondly, each individual living in this world has a challenge. You don't also use differently able. All of us are able in our capacity. And just say it depends. Like he said, the census, if you meet barrier in the community, in the society, and you cannot overcome it. Like, let's put it this way. I use these glasses. Doesn't mean I'm a person with disability. I have a barrier, but I can overcome it because I have a glass that aids my vision. The speaker is speaking without the microphone, can't hear him. It doesn't make him a person with disability. So the microphone can magnify his voice. So please, we use words, persons with disability, people with disability. Please don't use the other acronym. Use it. Thank you.
Okay, I want to also say something. like he says that persons with disabilities are those who can't walk. We have different types of disabilities. It's not only those who can walk and persons with disabilities. There are those with deafness, those with blindness. And you say that a deaf person cannot walk. He can walk, but he's also a person with disability. Then can you say a blind person cannot walk? He can walk, but he's also a person with disability. So that is not a definition of disability or a person with disability, because we have several forms of disability. That's why I mentioned them, and it must be interaction with barriers in society, that hinders them from participating fully with all basis with others.
Thank you very much. I think the conversation around the table has helped us. This session is not going to last long. I don't want us to lose half of the class, but we are going out to pick calls and so on. And I'm sure we've picked one thing or the other. So all the answers with the clarifications and amendments, are correct. And we're looking at people that one way or the other have peculiar needs to enable them to function like the rest of the society. So a person living with physical disability will need means of movement, and we look on government and the rest of them to provide that. But still, the answer I really want about who PWD is there, I have not really gotten. So what I've gotten really are kind of definitions or redefinitions. And so my own answer will be, who are people with disability? They are men. They are women. Are we making sense? They are journalists. They are lawyers. They are nurses. They are medical doctors. I don't know whether they are judges. They are market women. They are market men. They are shoemakers. Are we together?
Yes.
That is the way I want us to see them. In other words, they are an integral part of our society. They are accountants, isn't it? They are engineers. How do we see that young man that Mr. Macaroni and Fox visited? Have we seen something on social media?
Yes.
That young guy who has now gotten admission to Bell University. They are students, and he says he's going to study science. So I want you to, as when you leave this forum, to put a stakeholder. And the reason why I'm saying that is that there's not a single issue that you are reporting as a journalist that you cannot get a person with disability to express an opinion on. So you are writing on budgets, you are writing on exchange rates, you are writing on all those things. In the banking halls, you have people with disability. But that is the only way we can do two things: promote their voices and also promote their image. But let me also warn that, let's say I interview him now on an issue and he has agreed. I'm doing it because I'm coming from the background of a journalist who wants to promote the issues of people with disability and their image. But you also have to be ethical and professional. You will need to ask him or her whether you will not mind being referred to in your story as a person with disability. Because somebody else may not, may say, look, I've spoken as an accountant, what has my disability got to do with it? So that is why I first highlighted those principles of social responsibility. That when you are fulfilling an obligation, you must also be mindful of the ethical and the professional standards. So I want you to have this at the back of your mind. That there's not a single issue we are reporting. And this is what we don't see in the media. We see a situation where Buhari is fighting the former chief judge and they are bringing experts and so on. And nobody has brought, even in the media, we have so many of our colleagues, we have the likes of Adebayo with Radio Nigeria and so on. How often do we speak with them? When we talk about press freedom, on May 3rd now, we're going to be talking about press freedom and the rest of them, attacks on journalists, violence, and so on. Have we ever done story on how journalists with disability cope in moments of crisis when they have to also report like others. So it's important for us to know who people with disabilities are. We need to think widely, and it's when we think widely like that that we can do all kinds of stories, that capture their issues. And you will see that each person with disability has his or her issues, and our duty is to adopt diverse approaches in reporting them, particularly reflecting their voices in the reporting of the economy, business, social affairs, legal affairs, and so on and so forth. Because they are not just with disability, but we just forget that completely. That among them, are lawyers. So if you are doing something on judiciary, or you are doing something on electoral reform, and you want to speak with experts, you must make that effort. Unfortunately, we have organizations that have data that can tell you that, oh, I'm sure if you get to Jake and you say, Jake, I need a lawyer, with disability or with ability to talk to. I'm sure Jake will be able to say, all these lawyers are there. So create a database so that when you are doing stories, I think that is what can make us, an inclusive reporter that is interested in promoting issues of people with disability. Then the second one I say here is constantly scrutinizing state of implementation of protocols, policies, and legislations that guarantee the rights of PWDs. INEC has, an opportunity policy that talks about persons with disability. The chairman refers to it. Nigeria itself has an act of passed into law on disability issues. What exactly is happening to all these things? How are we implementing them? We can use calendar events. I mentioned one, just now, World Breast Freedom Day. We have World Malaria Day. We have, World HIV/AIDS Day. We have World Day of Communication. Which other ones?
World Disability
World Food Day.
Disability.
I know. I know we use that one as the last. We have World Disability Day. We have, so look at the example we give you the way we have been handling with disability. So when you are doing the story of World Disability Day, and as a radio person, who among us are from radio? Yeah. Okay, for radio, it's my favorite means of when it comes to journalism or television. And on that day, you have decided that this time around, on this World Disability Day, we're looking at persons, professionals with disability, another form of PWD, and you are doing a story around that. You know what you are doing? You are in doing that story when you talk to professionals with disability, lawyers, doctors, and so on. You are doing one thing that you may not realize. You are encouraging, that kid that has similar disability. You are building in him a confidence. He's seeing a role model and saying, oh, so I can become, a doctor. It's not about the story you are doing. It's about the image you are projecting, the message you are sending across. Then you are also disabusing the minds of the uninformed, who are now hard and saying, so these people, remember how this, I'm sure they will remember, was the fight of the, to people living with albinism. Professor Oyelabo, who rose to the, apex, and I'm sure contributed to the whole idea of promoting these issues. It was their World Health Organization, and Lampo was a household name. And I remember, in our own local parlance, we called people living with albinism, happy, and even as well, we were excited. See, you know what I'm saying? So you don't know what you are doing. So beyond even the issues you are treating, you are sending messages. Because they are asking us here to say, how do we, promote that image? So please let's have it up. So all those calendar events, please, when you are doing a story of them, have the voices of who disability included in your report in one way or the other. No matter what the issue is, it will be World Malaria Day, World Food Day, World Poverty Day. That one will even be wonderful because all those statistics, so people are living in poverty in Nigeria. And we're saying that 30 million people are living in disability. How many of that are also living, in poverty? And then we raise their issues. When we do that, it becomes something that draws the attention of politicians. Of course, we are in election time. we need to give visibility to particularly for candidates at election time. In this election, there are people with disability contesting who need to promote their issues. And unfortunately, this is one area where we have not been doing well. So currently, the National Press Center, we're monitoring the coverage of the 2023 elections by 14 newspapers. Sorry, I wanted to put 10 there. Let me just correct it. I don't forget. So we have 10 newspapers and 4 online ones. And we're monitoring how they are covering the 2023 elections. The indicators we are getting there shows that we are not yet there when it comes to reporting the inclusive issues of people with disability. And that, unfortunately, very, very unfortunately, has been the trend since we've been doing this monitoring 2011, 2015, 2019, now 2023. So let's look at the picture we are seeing. Now, that monitoring, and by the grace of God, on Tuesday, here in Abuja, next Tuesday, we're going to present the report for October and November. This example I'm giving is that of October. And something tells me, and in spirit, that maybe most of you here will get invited to that program, particularly chairman of the, I think, this is the Chabo, please. We have to drag you to that event with the NJ president. We are releasing the report for October and November, and we're also presenting the revised Nigerian Code of Election Coverage. I will mention it, I'm running up now. So these are what we're looking at in the other monitoring. We have 3 general indices: prominence according to relevant reports, the reporting format of the relevant reports, that is whether as news, pictures, then the use of sources in the context of diversity. We are going to see what we are discovering now. So we are looking at those 3 general indices, then we are looking at these 4 thematic areas: professional coverage of political parties. We are looking at the degree of professionalism in how we cover them. We're looking at professional coverage in terms of conflict sensitivity and issues of misinformation and disinformation. Then we're looking at professional coverage, inclusiveness, and related specific issues, and then coverage of election management body. But in terms of use of sources and professional coverage of inclusive issues, let us look at what we have found out in our monitoring report of October. Now, use of sources in print newspapers. So all these are sources that we use: male politician, female politician, youth organization, persons with disability, INEC. No, it's not Facebook, really. It's not Facebook. They are just issues that we're monitoring and very. So these are sources that we're looking at that we talk to and so on. Look at where we have the people. It easily comes out as one of the least used sources. Yet we have established here that persons with disabilities are professionals. You know what I'm saying? They are even politicians. They are contesting, but we are not using them as sources of election news. So you ask yourself why. This is for October. So you can see that they rank. Now, if you add a female politician, now let's look at the broad issues of inclusivity now and young people, which is why we are going to discover that the inclusive groups rank lowest among those that we're using as sources of our electoral report. Although we're dealing with just 14 news organizations, but it is not impossible that this might be a trend across the media. Then in the online media, which we monitor, it's the same trend. In fact, we discovered that it's only one of them that use. In fact, it's like it almost you cannot even see that blue line up there. That is what we have seen. And look at our gender bias, the sources, male politicians. Look at female politicians. Look at where they put them. So we don't just have that consciousness. Then let's look at volume of inclusive issues now in the 10 principles we are monitoring. The total stories on elections and politics and so on in October were 2,180, the 10 newspapers. So out of this, only 86 stories, representing 3.9%, were related to inclusive issues. And out of that, youth had 41, women 32, and persons with disability just 5. It's not even up to 1%. So that's the image. Of course, we're going to present the entire report. However, in spite of the fact that we have very few stories, we are happy that some news organizations are showing effort more than the others. So clearly you can see leadership, you can see the guidance. Now we're going to give award to media houses that pay better attention to inclusive issues. So, exactly. So if you come from any of these here, you better go and tell your editor that they need to begin to do more because IBC is going to give an award. And if you are that reporter that provides the highest number of stories, they win this award. And so the blue indicates youth, women, and then this indicates person with disability. So you can see from this now. Are you telling me the newspaper that has done best for PWD using those indicators? This blue is for youth. What is this color? Because my wife says I don't know color. Because as a 60-year-old man, the color I know is blue, 7 colors. For you people now, you have battle red. Daily independence. How about for women? Which came second for women? Is youth. How about youth? Which one is it? Which one performs best for youth? Leadership. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, leadership. And then followed by
The
guardian, and then independent. Exactly. So the reward is coming. Let's look at online media. Again, look at online. The total number of stories that we deem relevant were 623 during this period. And then there were just 9 stories on youth, 3 on women, and only 1 report on persons with disability in all the 4 online media. I mean, this is like a standard, actually. And that only one is coming from people online. So that's what we see. Then there's also something that is important: prominence. So it could also be that the stories are not many, but supposing they are prominently used. So in terms of prominence, we're looking at were these stories published on the front page of those newspapers. So remember we have 86 stories in all, and then so when it comes to women, Punch had 4 reports on women on their front page. The Guardian 3, Daily Trust 2, Vanguard used photos, which is still okay. Then respect of youth. Then in respect of people with disability, Daily Trust, Daily Sun, the Guardian, and Vanguard had 4 front pages stories respectively, which is still fair, but it's not enough. And it's also because we don't factor into our reporting who these people are. And in an election period where the Abino Foundation is doing so many things on inclusivity, we have other organizations and so on. Even if it's to publish what they are saying, the demands they are making, or even the commendations they are giving on items, they're supposed to be front-page issues. But they are forgetting that they are dealing with a large population. So we're also not happy that the non-prominence is not being given to them. We didn't mention prominence in the online media. So this is where we are, and yet we've made a lot of recommendations before now. In 2015, we went as far as producing the charter on elections for persons with disabilities under different projects, and you will see the various recommendations in these. So these are issues we know. So when you get this, you're also going to see what we had in that charter, the challenges faced by women with disabilities during elections. And then their demands. I'm sure all this will be useful background for you when you are able to report to see how far we have gone to overcome some of these challenges. This was in 2015, And by that time, Avilo Foundation and others have done a lot of work. So it's possible some of the challenges here have already been addressed in one way or the other. You can see people with ability and then their demands. And I'm sure people present here will tell us that some of these have been done. And we have people with visual impairment and so on and so forth. Even people with leprosy cases, their issue is still there. I'm not sure many of them will still be able to vote. They complain that they were not even allowed to register because of stigmatization and discrimination. Many of them did not register. These are issues that we engage our attention and so on. So we made a lot of recommendations at that time, and I've spoken to most of these. The fact that when we're doing investigative reporting, we need to touch on them, political reporting, and so on and so forth. For aspirants, let's give them space and time. Let's reflect voices of persons with disability. So all this I said before, as students, youth, professionals, workers, politicians, and so on and so forth. So it's just a summary of all that we have been saying. Then finally, we have the Nigerian Media Code of Election coverage. When you come on Tuesday, you are all going to get copies. In section 1, where I talk about equitable access, that's a subsection that talks about underrepresented groups. So we are now going beyond the issue of appeal to let you know that our regulatory framework mandates you to do all that we have been saying. And it says here that the media organization shall, as a matter of deliberate editorial policy, target underrepresented groups, especially women, youth, persons with disabilities, and rural dwellers in the coverage of the electoral process. It says you must target them deliberately, and secondly, consciously reflect their views and perspectives that are reported. Please, those are key words. Consciously. So that's also something we need to take away from here. That consciousness. That anytime you are doing a story or you are missing an assignment or you are doing your editorial conference, bring up issues of persons with disability because the consciousness must be there. That is what the Nigerian Media Code of Election Coverage says. In section 2, under professional and social responsibilities, it also says we should ensure we should strive to disseminate voter education in indigenous languages and or through messages that target underrepresented groups, including women, youth, and people living with disability. So again, it's another responsibility that the code imposes on us. Then it says to uphold the right to profession and so on. So in conclusion, I would like to say that the following few words actually summarize all that we have said so far in this conversation, which all of us have gladly, participated, and that is that the media could better mainstream disability inclusive issues if we have the knowledge, we acquire the right knowledge, and I think we acquire the number of knowledge day to day, even while trying to define, who persons with disabilities are. If we have the consciousness, and of course, we develop the attitude, because also about attitude. You may have the consciousness, but you may not have the attitude, and all those things go together. I believe that with these three, we as journalists who make the Nigerian media what it is, will help to set the appropriate disability inclusive agenda and put persons with disability inclusive agenda at all times as part of our overall agenda setting under the social responsibility theory. Thank you very much. So, maybe Lee, over to you.
Question.
I didn't say you should lean on me. Just come and lean on everybody here. Do we have any
Questions?
or maybe issues we disagree with or additions or whatever that we want to make? Yes. We have 1, 2, 3. Are you getting the lean on lean? Are you getting it? Yes, I think 4. So let's have your contribution. It's not question, it's just contribution.
Is it Mr. Ora? I know that they want to say thank you very much.
Okay, so when that time I ran for Senate, I did not win. My in-laws were living in the States, and I contested in Lagos. So when I visited them, and I welcome me, I said, Senator, you are welcome. I said, that was why the result of the election. I did not win. They now say, I know that they had now, but all those people that voted for you, you are their senator now. So my in-laws called me Senator Arose.
Okay.
So you will decide to call me that.
Thank you so much. This I will especially carry out as the findings who are persons with disability. If you are not going to answer that question, you go straight to the dictionary definition of disability. But to help us to see that it goes beyond that. They are doctors, they are directors, they are executive secretaries of federal parastatals. They are CEOs, and you need to go on and on. Some responsibility are identified with the group, some are not. Some, like you said, also want to give their disability status private. Before, I want to ask for what you just said. When it comes to reporting disability, especially when it has to do with statistics presented. First want to say that I don't know the indication you use, the character you use, picking the media houses to use for the I'll leave that to you. However, I want to say that in the inclusion market, we tend to do a study of reports of persons. We see that most of the reports, except the ones generated from inclusive use network or inclusive marketing, most of the reports are negative reports. And if we are not careful, the true goal of the app will be defeated, and that is to reduce both apathy and responsibility, and to increase the number of participation of persons with disabilities in all electoral processes, even after the 2023 general election. What do we report? We report just the negative part of the electoral process, like you said earlier. If we report only persons with disability do not have access, they cannot vote, police don't do this to them. Then persons that cannot participate in this election will not participate in the next one. But if we try to be balanced in our reporting, especially promoting, knowing that yes, from where we are coming from, persons with disability have not had this opportunity before. This is the first time we're having a dashboard for them. This is the first time we're having this kind of engagement, proper advocacy. Let's see how we can support the positive aspect more, so that next election we will see more persons with disability going to register to collect their voters, knowing that they can vote and be voted for. Then another issue is family members of persons with disability. If I'm, for example, I'm deaf and I'm married, I want to go and vote, my wife will say, don't go. If they start running, how will you hear? But if she agrees from the news and know that persons with disability have been given priority, not just written in the constitution, yes, I think my wife will allow me to go next month. So our reporting format is very important. Also, we want to look at okay, let me leave that for our
your side, when you're speaking, you're not making use of it. So I want to take note of that and correct it. So because it has been you're using it while saying you're using that, but once you don't use it, I know you already know about it. Okay. I quite agree with you about reporting making use of persons with disabilities not just being on disability issues, but several other issues. So we have necessary can serve as a resource person and speak on those issues. It gives visibility to disability. And people, because most time people relate when they see you as a person with disability, as someone who is sick, who have any contribution, who may not do it so no any in that way. Because you think that your disability affects you, you're thinking on your brains and you know nothing. So, but when the media continue to put persons with disabilities forward to speak on several issues, people will need to change their perception about disability. I know that for the fact that he has a disability doesn't mean that that sees so much that the person. So I think we need to do more about identifying persons with disabilities who are resourceful on the field and begin to put them forward. That was the day I was I think I was in the midst of people going for sports. And I tell them that I love sports so much, I can even analyze sports. I'm a fan of Arsenal. And I know virtually every player in the EPL.
Just like me.
You understand?
You say I'm biased now, but with this news now, I think you have won one of my million election rules. We're both Arsenal fans. Many people were happy that
Man, you for life.
So I told them that it's not only when you want to talk about disability that you invite. If you want to speak sports, I can speak sports. I can analyze sports. So when you give me opportunity to analyze sports, people see me as I can actually analyze sports. It makes so many people to fall in love with me. And that will need to change their perception about disability. If this man can analyze sports, that means so many other things he can offer. So I quite agree with you that we should try and make use of that whenever we are putting forward everything. Not just only the day of those calendars. There's people who have shows every morning and pick it up and begin to invite, time to time, invite persons to talk about. We are in political time. Some of us know much about politics. We can still come and analyze politics. So this can give, and at the end of the day, maybe towards the end, that you let it is ready. You're letting people know that the person is speaking with a person with visual impairment or a person this person has been on which and people will change their perception. It's not good to lose the person as a person said at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because if you do that at the beginning, some people will lose interest. They want to change it naturally. But if you introduce the person using his name, then towards the end you're letting them know that it's actually a person who's speaking with. Then a whole lot of people have been listening to that person. Some other time, we see people who call you and say, we want to hear from that man again. So it's go a long way. Then you talk about online, the research that you did, the online people who have been reporting disability issues. There are several online platforms that has been, in fact, dedicated or I don't know whether your report, whether it goes your research, also touches some of us here who has dedicated our time going to all the hinterland, reporting disability issues, and we are looking forward to actually see our names there.
Okay, that would be good, please. We need to, well, hopefully we'll be able to have a larger sample because we've discussed it in the office and we don't want to be accused of, how can you say the media is not doing this? How many media have you? So the sample size is quite small and we're likely to address that very soon. So, very nice your opinion.
Sorry, can I just make a quick suggestion? It's almost past 12.
Okay, so that
maybe we should just do a walking tea break.
Oh, okay, and then conversation will continue there. But have you finished?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
done with
You are done. Okay, thank you. So based on your submission, that is something we're going to do. So at the presentation of this report on Tuesday, one of the recommendations we are going to make is that all the TV stations that have been running political programs, bringing candidates and so on, must feature people with disability because there are experts among them who can contribute to those issues. So that will be, we are going to make that a public demand, and we'll follow it up with a letter to them. Arise monitoring channels and so on to say that, and we'll remind them that unfortunately all of them endorse this code. So we'll remind them that one of the things they're supposed to do, and that we've noticed that in the analysis, we've not been seeing lawyers with disability to talk about electoral law. And I'm sure that would hopefully, or we want to see changes in a positive manner. And I agree with him too that look, we need to tell positive stories. So maybe, of course, later on, I think we'll have presentation by the Amino family. Some of the things they've achieved, we especially at the level of INEC, the changes they have made. I think we need to talk about that so that we encourage them to come out. Where they have said, those of you who have issues, we have a prayer, ballot papers, all those things, we need to report them. And I think it also puts pressure on INEC to fulfill its commitment. So when we come back, we'll take the other two. Said we should make it a walking tea break. President Jake is already walking the talk. So all them okay.
Ladies first.
Ẹ pẹ̀lẹ́ o. Lọ́rí o, mi ò wà tó ń ṣe fẹ́nìkan lọ́wọ́ tí wọ́n yẹ sọ̀rọ̀ tó ń kàn pé fún ẹ ìtẹ̀ ìdìbò. Bàbá bẹ́ẹ̀ ni ẹ ká sọ̀rọ̀ nípa ìtẹ̀ náà.
When you 2-3 months into Papa, I think when you call
Everybody says it's never over, it is over. You have to be a tight place, so I'm sure we'll make up for it.
Sorry, sir.
I thought we would go on the queue, I don't know. Yeah, I'll go and pick it.
You won't bring for chairman. No. Chairman, come and sit down.
No.